Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another musical moment with the old-time rock and roller. Today's show is going to be spectacular. It is centered around the greatest drummers I have ever worked with. Also, there will be a special feature because my fan letters from all of Steve Perry's fans, One Voice to the Voice, got 2,500 views in 1 week. So I've decided to make 2 fan letters a week as part of the Musical Moments stories. Just a little feature for all of Steve's fans. Okay, let's get started. In 1968, when I first went to college, I would often go to stoner pot parties where they would play psychedelic music, and In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida by the Iron Butterfly was one of the crowd favorites. It had maybe a 17-minute drum solo in the middle of it. It was really long, and it was played by a guy named Ron Bushy. Well, apparently in the late 60s, Ron was home and his keyboard player, Doug Engel, called him up. He had been drinking, he drank a gallon of Red Mountain wine, and he had a country ballad about 1.5 minutes long. So he started playing it to Ron, and Ron was writing it down on a napkin. And the words Ron could understand were In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, because Doug was so drunk. It was supposed to be In the Garden of Eden. So, to make a long story short, they were recording their next album. They were on Long Island in the studio, and the engineer said, why don't you guys just run through something and I'll get some levels. So they started off with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida and played it maybe 18 minutes. And the tape was rolling the whole time. When they finished, the engineer said, you guys better come in here. I think we got something special. And after a lot of editing and reworking, it was the feature track on their next album. The song was so big that at one time, Ron and the band were flown by helicopter to a huge festival in Honolulu. They touched down, they played 30 minutes. In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida was half of the show, and Ron played a 17-minute drum solo, and he told me later they made $80,000 for that show. So what does this have to do with me, you say? Well, 6 years later, I was in Hollywood recording an album with Steve Jablecki in our band Slingshot. And we had cut 3 tracks, and we were using David Atwood, who was the drummer for America. He was their first drummer. Well, we got to this rock song, and he just wasn't cutting it. So the producer pulled the plug. He said, time out. This isn't working. 2-hour break. So I got in my car, and I drove over to Studio Instrument Rentals, SIR. That's where all of the big bands recorded, all of the time. Well, I walked into a sound stage, and there was a guy banging nails and hammering together a sound stage for a band to rehearse on. I said, excuse me, I'm in a jam, and I'm looking for a really good rock drummer. Do you know anybody? And here's this guy banging nails for $2 an hour. That was the minimum wage. And he said, yeah, I know somebody. And I said, great, who is it? And he said, me. And I said, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Ron Bushy, the drummer for the Iron Butterfly. Wow! I thought, this is unbelievable. I said, can you drop this right now and come record with us? He said, well, I'll charge you $15 a song. I said, no problem, let's go. So we're driving to the studio, and I was loaded with questions. I mean, Ron was an enormous star just 6 years before. I was freaking out to his records. So I said, what happened to all your money? Why are you working as a carpenter? And he said, well, two things. He said, I had a bad financial advisor who advised me to buy a couple of $1 million worth of real estate that all went bad, and the rest I spent on amphetamines, cocaine, blow, party favors, you name it, but now it's all gone. So we went to the studio, he heard the song one time, played a fantastic part, and that was it. That's all we needed him for. But we became friends, and I went out to his house in Malibu a couple of times. We hung out and had a really good time. I've got one additional tidbit on the Ron Bushy story. When the Iron Butterfly played at the Royal Albert Hall in London, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr came out to see the band. And after the show, Ringo came backstage and asked Ron, can I take you to dinner and buy you some drinks and everything? And Ron said, sure. So they were out eating and drinking and having a good time, and Ringo said, I hope you don't mind, but I stole a piece of your drum solo for our song, The End, on the Beatles album. And Ron said, no, I don't mind at all. Coming from you, I consider that a great compliment. Thanks, Ringo. Man, what a thrill that was to have him on my first record in Hollywood. So thank you, Ron. Now, the next drummer I want to bring up is Bill Lordan. Bill played with Robin Trower and Jack Bruce, Robin Trower, and Bill Lordan, BLT. Well, in '74, I was playing down at Huntington Beach, and the guy who was letting us stay at his pad brought over some Oaxacan pots, some hash oil, and the Bridge of Sighs album. So we put it on and we spaced out, man. It was so heavy. Day of the Eagle, Two Rolling Stone. These songs were mind-blowing. So we went to the club that night, and I was just really like on cloud nine and pumped up. Trower was the first guitar player since Jimi Hendrix that I heard that really captured that Hendrix sound and vibe. It was really cool. Well, in about 1989, I was out visiting my old guitar buddy from the Forrest, a friend named Bobby Zinner. And Bobby knew Bill Lordan, and Bill had just finished the Bill Lordan project. So Bob arranged a jam session with his band and Bill Lordan as the drummer. And we went out there, I met him, we played for 3 hours. It was just a mind-blowing experience. And then we got to talk, and he said, one of my greatest regrets was not getting to play with Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. He said, Jimi and I were friends and would jam a lot when he'd come out to LA. Well, Bill was out on the road with one of his groups, and back then there were no answering machines, so everybody had a service. And Jimi Hendrix called up Bill. He couldn't reach him. The phone went over to his answering service, and he said, this is Jimi Hendrix. I want Bill to play with me at Woodstock in 3 days. Have him call me right away at this number. Well, Bill's service didn't interrupt him, and he didn't call in for messages until 4 days later. And at that time, he learned he could have played at Woodstock with Hendrix. So after the jam, he sent me a big poster of me and Bobby Zinner and him playing his big double kit and pictures of him playing with Hendrix. And he had played with Sly Stone and Ike and Tina and some other great groups, but I'll never forget the Robin Trower Band, Bridge of Sighs, and playing with Bill Lordan was one of the greatest treats of my life. Now, Roger Hawkins, studio drummer for the Muscle Shoals Swampers. He played on almost everything. Land of 1,000 Dances with Wilson Pickett. Respect and Chain of Fools with Aretha. Tons of the Seeger stuff. He even played with me on Old Time Rock and Roll. His discography is this long. And I used to talk to Roger, and he said, I can listen to somebody play a song on an acoustic guitar, and I know exactly the right beat and the right genre to put that song into to make it a hit. And man, he was incredible. There was a time after he played Land of 1,000 Dances, and Wilson Pickett went over to him and said, man, you're a great drummer. And Roger was only 18 or 19 years old, but he listened to that and he said, yeah, I'm a great drummer. And he believed it, and his musical body of work speaks for himself. So those were the top three. So I've decided to make 2 fan letters a week as part of the Musical Moments stories. Our first fan letter today is from Homar Salazar. And Homar writes, Hi Forrest, I've been a Journey and Steve Perry fan since 1979. Back in '86, during the Raised on Radio tour, my sister brought my brother and me second row floor seats. The tickets were $17.50 each for the show at the Reunion Arena in Dallas. The concert was energizing, amazing. In December of '94, I got to see Steve during his For the Love of Strange Medicine tour in Fort Worth, Texas. After the concert, about 40 fans waited outside the theater to see him once more. Upon walking out of the double doors, he got many cheers. He waved as he walked in between the 2 rows of fans. At that point, only 2 people shook his hand, a female fan and me. As he continued walking towards his tour bus, my friend Robert and I decided to walk along with him and chat. We chatted until we got to the bus. He gets on, and the glass doors begin to close. Steve stayed on the steps and kept looking out towards us and smiling at us. The bus starts rolling away. Slowly he waved, then gave us the 2-hand, "You're number 1" hand motion. a two-hand, two-index finger shooting forward hand motion wave as he rolled away. That was pretty cool. This was our number one time of number 2 with the great Steve Perry. Our drive home, this is a funny story. On our drive back home, we followed the bus while in Fort Worth's downtown area. It eventually got on Highway 30 going west towards Dallas. And since we were headed there as well, we continued to follow it all the way to a downtown Dallas hotel. We saw him get off the bus and walked in using a side entrance. We parked across the street and entered the hotel using the main entrance. Seconds later, we came across Steve again. He took the time to chat with us for at least 2 more minutes before being taken away by hotel security. He was led into an elevator whose doors could not be seen from our angle and disappeared. Steve then peeped out of the elevator looking at us both, shrugged his shoulders, gave us a funny look, and went back in. Our night was done. This was our time number 2 with the great Steve Perry. We never got an autograph because we were too stupid to ask for one. No pictures because it was 1994 and we had 0 time to buy a disposable camera. Also, today's cell phones were not in the picture then. Journey's music and his songs are always in my head. I cannot give you my top 20 song list because it could change tomorrow. The songs that have made an impact on me are, with Journey, Winds of March, Patiently, Sweet and Simple, Stay a While, Still They Ride, Open Arms, Send Her My Love, After the Fall, Ask the Lonely, Only the Young, Only Solutions, I'll Be All Right Without You, Still She Cries, Easy to Fall, and Trial by Fire. Steve's solo career, everything. It's Over, Don't Fight It, Strung Out, Missing You. Anyway, I Stand Alone. We're Still Here, and I find myself singing Easy to Love in my sleep. Something about it is magical. There has not been a singer then or now that is a better singer in voice, style, and character out there that would compete with this legend. His music will live on for many, many years from now. Homer Salazar. Thank you, Homer. That was a great story. I appreciate you sharing. Our second comment today is from Cindy Brooks. And Cindy writes, "Hi, Forrest. Feeling better, so I have a story for you. I started listening to music again last summer. I was a huge Journey with Steve Perry fan in the 70s and 80s. So I started listening and researching everything I could about Steve and Journey back then. It brought back a lot of wonderful memories. I was blessed to see Journey twice, and in 1983, one night, we saw them on a Friday night in Kansas City, Missouri, Kemper Arena. We had wonderful seats. They were right up front to the side, and I could see Jonathan Cain wonderfully. And I'm thinking that I'm a nurse, and I think, there's this concert that Steve Perry was out of breath and went underneath the stadium, and I could see him getting some oxygen. Now that's a memory that I have. I saw a lot of concerts in my day, so I'm pretty sure about that memory. But I'm not 100% about the oxygen. The concert was just so awesome. We jammed through the whole thing. Then we found out they were playing the next night at the Kansas Coliseum in Wichita, Kansas. So off we went. We didn't have tickets. This was July 18th, 1983, and we had to pay $30 a piece for the scalper tickets back then. Of course, that was a lot of money, Well, we didn't have good tickets and we got scalped for sure. We ended up behind the stage of the arena. The guys didn't even turn around to look back at us because there was nobody back there. It was blocked off, but they let us stay there because we told them what happened to us. I will never forget how much fun that was just to sit back there and jam to their music. Oh my goodness, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. When the concert was over, we went to the back of the stadium and got a car to go back home. In the 1980s, me and my friend traveled during spring training camp during the summer days with the Kansas City Royals. Journey was so much a part of our music when we would be driving to the spring training camp in Florida. We would do this in April for 3 years in a row. The reason women back then would talk to the drivers of the buses is that on our trips back and forth to Florida, we would make connections. We met a man that owned the bus suites back in the day when bands would travel in the buses. And so we talked a lot about it on the road trips. It was so interesting. We talked and it was really awesome. So exciting to me. Those days with the early Journey seemed like it was yesterday, and they were awesome. They were great. I'm so glad you are doing this, asking people what experiences they had, because when I started this research on Journey and researching some of my life back in the good old days with the bands, I was wishing somebody would come up with this idea. As I was researching Steve Perry and his life with Journey, I learned we have a couple of things in common, which made it even more exciting, like baseball, water skiing, personal life issues, and the best thing he did for me was when he told Mike Wallace he was violated. That helped me heal because that was a better word to explain it in that way. I'm sure that Steve Perry, with his writing experiences, has touched so many lives and so many hearts. I've tried to teach my granddaughter that back in our days, songs about loving and beautiful experiences didn't have all that cussing and negativity. And yes, she does like Don't Stop Believing, and she does like some other songs that I've been making her listen to. And she thinks it's pretty awesome. I look forward to listening to your stories of other people and what Steve Perry has done for them. Have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for doing this. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for your comment. And this concludes this week's fan update from One Voice to the Voice. Keep watching the videos and turn all of your friends onto them so that the Steve Perry Nation can get even stronger and we can get them that Kennedy Center honor. Thank you, my friends, for coming along on this musical moment. I would love to hear your comments. Give me your feedback. Who are some of your favorite drummers? I would have included Ginger Baker, but Ginger and I never met or played together. So this is my list. Let me hear yours and what you thought about these stories. In the meantime, keep love in your heart and a song in your head, and I will see you down the musical story highway on the next musical moment with the old-time rock and roller. So long, my friends.